come through me. You arrive and I'm on fire. Subdue me to explode that you inspired. So brutally. Second episode, all smiles. Let's make a movie in the name of all great liars. Improvise in Kaufman style. They are all reasons to me. They are all reasons to be. They are all reasons to see. They are all reasons to be. How the hell do you do this? Change the colors, shapes, and sizes.
Hello, and welcome to Reason. Today is Sunday, February 12th, and this episode is entitled, There Was Dark, There Was Light, Earth, Water, Sky. Then, Mud Made Me, and some animals, and a rib. Okay, so that was our evolution episode. Thanks for listening. I'm Joshua Billingsley, along with Paul Whitmire.
How you doing?
And this podcast is brought to you live from sunny Buffalo, New York. Reason Podcast is a weekly discussion of events, current and historical, from a skeptical, rational, and non-theological perspective. Reason Podcast is brought to you by The Offensive Atheists and the atheist community of Buffalo and Western New York. For further information, please visit our blog and website at wnyatheist.org, or you can email us at reason@wnyatheist.org. Tammy Kitzmiller can't.
Tammy Kitzmiller is
Thank
what
you.
I'm going with.
Yes. Tammy Kitzmiller et al. Versus Dover Area School Board, School District, and Board of Directors. United States District Court, MD, Pennsylvania. John E. Jones, District Judge. In October 2004, the Dover Area School District, that's Dover, Pennsylvania, changed its biology teaching curriculum to require that intelligent design be presented as an alternative to evolutionary theory, and that the book Of Pandas and People was used to teach as a reference book. Now, Paul and I went ahead, after watching a documentary on this, bought the book. Oh, it's a nice read.
Oh yeah, I have my collection. I have Of Pandas and People.
Mm-hmm.
I have the book by, is it Michael Behe?
Darwin's Black Box?
Yeah, Darwin's Black
that's
Box.
Behe.
And then there's the other one that I can't think of the name of. The reason why I get them confused is because Scott Behe is his son, who actually is an out-of-the-closet atheist.
Mm-hmm.
And I was confused.
Just like Ronald Reagan's son.
Right. But I confuse which one is the crazy nut job intelligent design scientist and which one is the out-of-the-closet atheist.
Well, we'll know soon enough. I'm going to comment on a few of his arguments a little later on there.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be a good time.
This book argues that the origin of new organisms is an immaterial cause. In a blueprint, it argues that that creation of life is a pattern devised by an intelligent agent. The text is non-committal on the age of the Earth. It comments on a few things here and there, but it tries to steer clear of that. It steers clear of who the intelligent designer was, simply that there was an intelligent designer, and that this should be taught in schools alongside standard evolutionary biology.
Yeah.
So, a little bit of backstory. On October 18th, 2004, the school board of Dover, Pennsylvania voted 6-3, resolving that there would be lectures on the subject of intelligent design with pandas, on pandas and people, as a reference book, and that the following statement was going to be added to their biology curriculum. Students will be made aware of the gaps or problems in Darwin's theory and of other theories of evolution, including, but not limited to, intelligent design. Note, origin of life is not taught. So they will not. They do not want the origin of life to be taught, period. and evolution will be taught alongside intelligent design. On November 19th, 2004, the Dover Area School District issued a press release stating that commencing January of 2005, teachers would be required to read the following statements to students in their 9th grade biology class at Dover High School. The Pennsylvania academic standards require students to learn about Darwin's theory of evolution and eventually to take a standardized test of which evolution is a part. So they're teaching it under duress. They're making it clear that teaching this is something they're doing under duress, that they do not believe or follow this, but simply that the state of Pennsylvania requires that they teach it.
Right, and this is these are the Pennsylvania standards. So this is what the state of Pennsylvania, in their control over the entire academic system, at least for secondary schools, made a determination that these specific points were important for students to learn. And this is a statement being read in a public school to the student saying, screw that.
Yes. They also argued for a 50-50 teaching of evolution and intelligent design, which did not go over, but they did try to include this of pandas and people. This, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but I think that we came up with this is the first intelligent design textbook.
Well, it certainly is the first intelligent design textbook. Whether or not it's the first creationism textbook,
well, no, it's not the first creationism textbook. There were a few more, but this is the first one that was called Intelligent Design.
Right. Well, Of Pandas and People came out right after. It begins with an A. The trial that actually said that creationism shouldn't be.
Well, the original version of this came out in 1993.
Yes.
Then they came out with another one in 2002, which was the one you're talking about. That's when they reformed it and changed it into intelligent design, not creationism.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying that they changed the words in there. So I think it is the first textbook to come out using the new terminology.
Now, this move was supported by a couple of people you may know. Then President George W. Bush.
Yes.
And Senator from Pennsylvania, Rick Santorum, who may have gotten a little bit of notoriety recently.
I've heard his name.
Yeah, it's come up.
Something about weird sexual acts, something like that.
That's actually what I heard too.
Yeah.
So the ACLU filed a lawsuit on December 14th, 2004, on behalf of 11 parents from the Dover School District, and they sought a law firm willing to take on the case, who would be willing to run the risk of not being paid if they lost. Eric Rothschild, partner at Pepper Hamilton LLP, and a member of the National Center for Science Education, their legal advisory department, took the case on a contingency basis, meaning, again, they only get paid if they win. The defense was represented by Thomas More Law Center. It's a fairly prominent conservative Christian not-for-profit law center based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Its stated goals are, quote, defending the religious freedom of Christians, restoring time-honored values, and protecting the sanctity of human life.
The Thomas More Law Center is relatively famous in this area.
It's incredibly famous in this area, yes.
They're the ones who are always. It's not just this Dover trial. They're anytime. Usually, their greatest adversary would be the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Those two seem to go head to head by proxy.
Loggerheads.
In everywhere across the country where the establishment clause is up for debate.
Whenever it's called into question, those are the people that are going to be on either side.
Yeah.
This side, of course, they were also supported by the Discovery
Institute.
Institute, thank you, who eventually actually pulled out as it got closer and closer, and they found out it was going to be a judge trial, not a jury trial. They pulled out, and they pulled out half their witnesses because, unless you're appealing to a jury of people that live in the area, they probably weren't going to win.
No.
But this was actually the first direct challenge brought to a United States federal court testing public schools and the policy that required, or any policy that required the teaching of intelligent design. Now, there are quite a few witnesses with some fairly nice qualifications that were on the plaintiff's side. A biology professor at Brown University, a former physics teacher at the school, a few philosophers, people like that. But the real fun in this particular case is from actually the witness for the defense, the people that are pro intelligent design. It's Michael Behe. He was the first witness and probably he spoke for the longest and had the most back and forth. He's the guy that came up with, or at least popularized, the term irreducible complexity. That's really the crux of the argument for intelligent design. That's the science they've got.
Yeah,
They have no other science. They've got irreducible complexity. Paul and I originally, when we were planning for this show, we were tearing through creationism and intelligent design, trying to find what their argument is, because they've got to have more than one prong. This is the one that they seem to have all over the place, but we figured they had to have more than one.
Yeah.
They don't seem to.
Well, and what's interesting is they have hung their hat on this idea of irreducible complexity. They also keep moving the goalposts on the irreducible complexity idea, because the biggest thing for a very long time was the eye. The eye is irreducibly complex. Yes. And that was kind of blown out of the water very quickly and very easily.
Actually, Darwin himself, I mean, the story about that is, and this is why actually you'll notice that very often my screen name is Darwin's Eye. I really like the story. That Darwin, who came up with the theory of evolution, throughout his life had this problem: what do you do with half an eye? And he couldn't figure it out and couldn't figure it out. That goes to show you that, no matter how good the theory, how smart the guy, no one's perfect and there are always problems. That's the story. Truth be told, he actually has a theory about how the eye would evolve. I mean, that's the BS story that creationists will tell you, is that even Darwin couldn't figure out the eye.
Right.
And even scientists can't figure out how bees fly or whatever kind of crap they sell. But that's untrue. It's the story I like because it makes me kind of warm and fuzzy inside, but it's completely untrue. So, but irreducible complexity. It's an argument that certain biological systems are too complex to have evolved from simpler or less complete predecessors through natural selection. Now, Paul, do you happen to remember the example, the flagellum, was it, that they used? I'll discuss the legal side of this. This one doesn't have a whole lot, but Paul is Captain Science, so I'm hoping that Paul can help us out on the flagellum, I believe.
Yeah, well, as Captain Science over here kind of chokes to death, but
yeah.
Yes. So the deal is the flagellum, which is a rotating. Basically, it's a whip or a tail on the back of bacteria, and it rotates much like the propeller on a ship to push the bacteria or whatever it is through whatever medium.
Transports it around.
Right, and its components are such as like 9 proteins in a circle wrapped around like 13 other proteins, and it has this motor aspect to it where
it works like a basic motor, like we're familiar with.
And if you remove even one of the proteins, it doesn't actually function as the flagellum. It doesn't rotate and do the whole thing. And so all of the ID people just went, aha!
See, it has to be just that way, or else it wouldn't work, and there's no way it could evolve into that.
Yeah.
It's one of the best arguments that they have, and it really is. It sounds really good, except they've got this other. Do you happen to remember what that is? I don't have it handy, and I apologize. I didn't actually expect to go off on this tangent because the.
Oh, are you talking about what the pieces of the flagellum? Yeah.
No, the syringe.
Right. Yeah. So what it is viruses actually use. Let's just say 8 of the 9 proteins actually makes a structure which, although it doesn't rotate, it actually serves very well to puncture a cell membrane and introduce genetic material, much like a virus would do to hijack a cell.
Right. And it works very well. In fact, when you look at the pictures of them, they're almost identical. There's a couple of tiny, tiny differences, but they're virtually identical. And the method they use to get around irreducible complexity in the trial, and you can actually watch a documentary on this. It's
a Nova
fantastic.
special. Yeah, it's really good.
It is. It's Judgment Day, Intelligent Design on Trial, and we watched that again today, just to build us up a little bit, to have some fun with that, because it really is good.
Inspiration.
But one of the things the scientists do is they take the mousetrap, which is again another intelligent design sort of idea. Is that how does a mousetrap work without a single one if you remove any of the parts, any single part, the mousetrap will not function, period.
Yep.
And this is true. It won't function to kill mice. But as he points out, you take away a couple of pieces, leave just the basic board, the spring, and the flap, or what they call the hammer, and it works quite well as a tie clip. Just goes to show you that it doesn't have to evolve in a straight line that in fact, if you do much like they do with this flagellum,
Yeah.
flagellum, not flagellin like Magellan, but flagellum. If you do it that way, that's what I keep messing it up with.
Okay.
It actually serves a perfect purpose for something else.
Right.
And it's actually sort of a lateral transition, not a direct linear forward moving.
And this is the same problem with the eye. Basically, the thing about this, you seem to think, oh, it has to be a less perfect eye, or it has to be a less functioning flagellum, because you can't kind of think outside, or at least the intelligent design proponents don't seem to be able to think outside the box, as it were, and go, oh, it could be something completely different that changed into this ancillary purpose. It's like, oh, it has to be, it has to have been a flagellum at the beginning. No, it's like...
Right, that's assuming that's circular reasoning.
Yeah.
It started out as a flagellum, so when we look back and see what it was, it had to have been the same thing to prove it could become this. Yeah, that's the problem with, I'm going to say religious thinking.
Yeah.
Is you assume everything is designed, so you see it as though it's designed.
Yes.
Once you do that, you sabotage your whole thing. But this was a bit of a tangent. I really liked it. I recommend the documentary wholeheartedly. It's fantastic. What I do want to get back to is his testimony. As the primary witness for the defense, he was asked to support the idea that intelligent design was a legitimate science. And he testified that, his words, not mine, there are no peer-reviewed articles by anyone advocating intelligent design supported by pertinent experiments or calculations which provide detailed, rigorous accounts of how intelligent design of any biological system occurred. In a response about astrology.
That's
Behe. That's
Behe's testimony.
Their prime witness.
Okay, all right.
Just
want to be clear on that.
He's the star that they put forth.
Okay.
He's the black box, Darwin's black box guy. In response to a question about astrology, the attorney asked him, well, by your definition of science, couldn't astrology be considered a science? He responds, again under oath, under my definition, a scientific theory is a proposed explanation which focuses or points to physical observable data and logical inferences. There are many things throughout the history of science which we now think to be incorrect, which nonetheless would fit that definition. Yes, astrology is in fact one, and so is the ether theory of the propagation of light and many other theories as well. So he says, my theory is as good as astrology.
That makes sense to me. He
loosens the definition of science so that intelligent design can fit into it, and the problem is that virtually anything can fit into it at that point. A few years back, he did a simulation modeling of evolution with a fellow by the name of David Snoke, described in a 2004 paper by the Discovery Institute, the pro-evolution people that put forth the Creation Museum. Amongst claimed peer-reviewed and peer-edited scientific publications supporting the theory of intelligent design, but under oath, he accepted that it showed that the biochemical systems it described could evolve within 20,000 years, even if the parameters of the simulation were rigged to make that outcome as unlikely as possible. So he did a study deliberately showing that this couldn't happen. It was a basic evolutionary process he was working on, showing that it couldn't happen, but then under oath had to come out and admit, well, actually, if you gave it 20,000 years, that actually could happen. He was undercut every step of the way by this, and this is their prime witness. Their prime witness. Every single piece of positive evidence he put forth, he had to, under oath, sort of undercut himself. There's a fantastic part of the trial where he actually says that there's no evolutionary study or no peer-reviewed journal, no articles discussing how the immune system could have evolved. And, in a bit of courtroom drama, the attorney cross-examining him pulls out, 200 journal articles, peer-reviewed, something like 8 or 10 books on specifically that topic to undercut him again. I mean, it's clear that he's used to BSing to a crowd that accepts his every word as gospel.
Well, the immune system, the evolution of the immune system in particular, is one of the most studied things in terms of evolution, because the study of the evolution of the immune system is what gives us
vaccines,
all of our vaccines, understanding how various bacteria and viruses mutate and change, and how the immune system adapts to that is fundamental to modern medicine.
Yeah, it's examined not just because it's complicated or difficult, but because it's actually useful.
Yes.
Things that are useful you can study and get real results from. This is what science does.
Yes.
Well, at the end of the trial, the Judge Jones, who, by the way, is a devout conservative, who was recommended, and this is the part that I love the most, recommended for his position as a judge by a Mr. Santorum, senator of the state of Pennsylvania, and appointed by George W. Bush.
Yes.
So he's a conservative Republican judge. He wrote a 139-page decision. In that decision, he says, "For reasons that follow, we conclude that the religious nature of intelligent design would be readily apparent to an objective observer, adult or child. A significant aspect of the intelligent design movement is, despite defendants' protestations, to the contrary, it describes intelligent design as a religious argument. In that vein, the writings of leading intelligent design proponents reveal that the designer postulated by their argument is the God of Christianity."
Yep.
The overwhelming evidence at trial established that intelligent design is a religious view, a religious view, a mere relabeling of creationism, and not a scientific theory. That's on page 43 of the 139 pages. The whole thing just bashes. It really does. Another quote here. "The one textbook to which the Dover Intelligent Design Policy directs the students contains outdated concepts and flawed science, as recognized by even the defense experts in the case."
Yeah.
In conclusion, just to close up, he closes with, "The proper application of both the endorsement and Lemon tests to the facts of this case makes it abundantly clear that the board's intelligent design policy violates the Establishment Clause. In making this determination, we have addressed the seminal question of whether intelligent design is science. We have concluded that it is not. Moreover, that intelligent design cannot uncouple itself from its creationist and thus religious antecedents." Elsewhere in the thing, he does comment on the fact that he does believe in a creator, and he believes that, he's a Christian. I like me some Jesus.
Good for him.
But that's not science, which
No.
is the way it should be. He's a judge. He deals with the law. Scientists are scientists. They deal with science. That's as simple as that.
Yes.
You need to keep things in the appropriate thing. Many of the witnesses for the against intelligent design were members of the community who were devout Christians. They led their Bible study, but they said, that's not science. Don't teach it in school. It's not science. The whole thing really was fantastic. One of the important things about this, though, is that this case cannot be appealed. The reason is there was the school board. It was a 9-person board. They put forth this new curriculum. Mm-hmm. Then it came to trial. It got a lot of press. There was another election. All 8 of the people that were up for election were kicked. 8 of the people that were already on the board that were up for election, the creationist group, lost.
Yeah.
So the entire board was overwhelmingly pro-evolution.
Okay.
So the board had changed their mind. There is no one that could appeal this decision. It's unappealable. This judge's word is law at this point.
Yeah, see, I thought you were getting to something that I missed regarding there's some legal reason why it couldn't be appealed. But yeah, they did basically vote the nut jobs out of office. Now, that's not to say that they couldn't, in the future, get a whole new group of creationists on the school board. Who could they, at that point, file an appeal?
No, there's a certain time deadline. If they did it immediately,
true.
They could, but now they couldn't. They've missed their window.
Yeah, well, you screwed yourself on that one, Dover.
Yeah, the new school board voted unanimously, with one abstention, to pay $1,011,000 in legal fees and damages due to the parents and their lawyers as a result of the verdict in the case.
$1,011,000.
Yep,
huh?
they did $1,011 to make nothing happen. That's what they spent out of poor Dover, Pennsylvania. One school. That's all they've got in that district. One school.
Yeah. So, this case is one that Josh and I have been talking about for years. I mean, I think, I first just, found that documentary, and you and I watched it a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Even before we all started doing this show and all of that stuff. And it's interesting because it points to the argument all along by the Intelligent Design Group was intelligent design is science. Now, whether or not, the court case goes into some detail regarding whether or not it is religiously associated, whether it passes the Lemon test, whether it has anything to do with the exclusion clause. And that's fine, but one of the primary things that it does is the intelligent design proponents argue that it is science. Intelligent design is science, which is a hard sell to make when you consider that science is only something that uses the scientific method, where you have a hypothesis, it's tested, you design an experiment, you form a theory based upon the results of the experimentation and the hypothesis, and then move forward from there. None of these things actually fit in with what intelligent design is saying. Which basically, if you look at the textbook of Panda and People,
all 130 pages?
Yeah, something like 130 pages. And just for comparison's sake, I pulled out my freshman evolutionary bio text, which is 1,071 pages. Mm-hmm. The intelligent design argument, really, even if you go to the irreducible complexity, what you're saying is evolution isn't right.
Right. It is not a positive theory. It doesn't posit anything. It only criticizes, which there's enough people out there that are doing that to evolution already.
Yeah.
They're people that are trying to figure out why and how it is incorrect or misleading or confusing, and that's what scientists do. They take any theory and they attack, because if you can poke a hole and then fill it with something else, you know what you get? You get a Nobel Prize.
Yeah. So, even if you could substantiate that the eye, for example, was irreducibly complex.
Right.
Even if you could say that with absolute certainty, you then have to modify your understanding of the theory of evolution to account for that, because it's not universal. It doesn't make all the other evidence for evolution go away. It has to be an anomaly within the theory, and you need to modify your theory to account for that. You don't get to say, well, what about the eye? That means we should throw out the whole thing.
Yep, throw out the whole thing.
And that's basically what the Intelligent Design Group seems to be saying.
Right. It's a theory. Nothing more. Just a theory.
We're gonna talk about that.
Just like gravity or what have you. Just a theory.
Sure.
But, yes. So that's that. That's the Dover trial. It's one of the more famous ones. We were looking at doing the Scopes monkey trial because that's absolutely fantastic. But there's too much snide, goofy in that one.
Yeah, and the Dover trial is kind of the most recent incarnation of this fight that's still going on.
To my bafflement, it's still going on.
Yeah.
But
all right. Well, this week we are talking about evolution. It is Darwin Day, apparently.
That's what I hear.
Yeah,
that's what I hear.
And it's just just a nice coincidence that we're talking about evolution on Darwin Day. We may have known that, or actually not. I didn't know that, but you may have suggested us talking about evolution. So, evolution is the topic. We're going to talk about Darwin. We're going to talk about evolution in general and a couple of different points. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, we would love to chat. So give us a call. It is 424-243-9589. And also the chat room's open at blogtalkradio.com, so come and join us in there. So we're going to move forward to talk about some things relating to evolution and the sciences in the news here. But I think we're going to go. We got a caller holding on the line here. Let's see what this young gentleman has to say.
All right, go
Paul,
ahead.
are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
How you doing?
All right. One point before we get on to back to the evolution thing right there, I just wanted to point out that just recently, within like the last hour or so, I went around the neighborhood and gathered up all these teenagers' laptops and shot them full of holes, and I'm telling you, it was awesome. So you guys just don't know how awesome it is to shoot a laptop full of holes, especially one owned by a teenager. It's pretty cool.
I'm
Well,
sure.
All
You,
right.
anytime you can brandish a firearm at a teenager, well, I'm pretty pro that. Their laptops, that's really second best.
No, it's just the satisfaction alone. All right, so getting back to the so-called intelligent design, one of the things that Josh mentioned earlier was that in Pennsylvania they were saying that, well, we're going to talk about, how different species, maybe change or how they came in here, but without talking about the origin of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, how could you possibly say, well, we're going to go with an intelligent design, but we're not going to talk about the origin of life? It's like, well, didn't you just mention the origin of life was by an intelligent designer?
Well,
I don't understand how you could possibly exclude them.
to be fair, though, Paul, this idea that evolution doesn't discuss abiogenesis or the origin of life from non-life is something that's important to the theory of evolution and something that's wildly misunderstood by creationists and those who argue intelligent
Wildly
design.
misunderstood.
And I think the only thing that they're really trying to do there is saying, oh, if you're limiting evolution to talking about species differentiation, then we're going to limit our theory as well, which I think is a good thing because anything that propagates people understanding that evolution does not have anything to do with the Big Bang or abiogenesis.
That's the argument I hear all the time is they say, oh, you're an evolutionist? What, like the Big Bang? It's like, well, no. I mean, in the grand scheme, evolution would be part of that, but evolution doesn't lead to... You're looking at that wrong. You're just confused. You don't understand the nature of the question you're asking me to answer. So you can't possibly be arguing the same point that I am. We're talking about two different things. You're moving the goalpost and changing the argument.
Both of those things, tend to tick off people who are holding on to Scripture. So therefore, they put them both in the same basket.
Right. And
two totally different spheres of science.
yeah, I mean, but it is true. You do bring up a good point in terms of as if we're talking about evolution, if we're discussing the minor points of the theory of evolution, we don't have to talk about abiogenesis. But if you're talking about it all just popped into existence, well, you kind of open that door back up. Mm-hmm. And I understand so you're artificially excluding it because you're saying we're limiting the scope to evolution as it's defined by evolutionists or Darwinists versus intelligent design. But yeah, I mean, if it did all pop into existence, then you immediately have to go right back to the question. So you're saying it popped into existence. There's been no change. They love to talk about that microevolution, which is a nice invented, made-up term there. But yeah, I mean, it's just as Josh was saying in going through the Dover trial, it is very much just a tearing down of any weak chinks in the armor that they can find with evolution. It doesn't have anything to do with its own independent idea or theory or hypothesis or anything.
Yeah, Einstein decided that he was going to talk about gravity, and we have a whole new way of looking at gravity. We all still believe things fall down, though.
Yeah.
No one has disputed whether or not things fall down, so gravity exists. What it means, well, that's a subject for scientists and scholars to look over, to read, to study, to try and figure out. We all accept the basic premise that evolution exists. Now, if you want to talk about change over time, how that functions, well, that's a different small mini sphere. There's too much evidence for evolution to argue that there's no such thing as evolution. I mean, we've seen it in laboratories.
The intelligent designer, they still have to come back and agree that there's some form of evolution. That's why they came up with this microevolution. It's a concession on their part because they have really no choice.
Yeah.
To say that bacteria stays exactly the same when we can just show you what obviously it doesn't. It's changing so rapidly we have to come up with new vaccines every year for a flu virus.
Yep.
If nothing changed, the one vaccine, you'd be done with it.
Well, at least I guess that's some effort on their part to try and unbury their heads from the sand a little bit.
No. It's the exact same thing that they've been doing the whole time. The Catholics did it before they invented Christianity, Protestantism, that is. They did that with the Earth. They said, well, the Earth is the center of the universe, and they killed everyone that disagreed. And then eventually they said, well, maybe not. And they accepted that, and they just sort of, petered along. And they'll, when you've got overwhelming evidence, they'll give you a little bit. Then they'll kill
But they
you for
hate
saying
it, though.
anything different than that.
They hate to give up that little bit at a time,
Yep.
because it's just science chiseling away at something that was obviously just created by fiction. Just like, hey, I got an idea, let's write it down. And then science comes along and says, well, you know what, we got evidence here that your idea probably isn't correct. And that just ticks people off.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that that's true, but Josh and I have watched a fair number of videos in the past couple of days, and YouTube
we
is
have.
just a bastion for stupidity. Oh, my God. So if you want some fun, go check that out.
Yes,
Speaking
the
of
YouTube.
videos, and obviously I watched the Nova Intelligent Design on Trial, too. That was excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Did you watch kind of like the counterpoint, I'll call it, is Ben Stein's Expelled, No Intelligence
I
Allowed?
didn't even get through it. I tried so hard.
It's painful. It is really painful.
I just didn't realize that I was a Nazi. I
Yeah.
didn't know that until Ben Stein told me, and then I thought, wow, I didn't realize that I practiced eugenics and killed old people.
I got a little bit farther into Expelled than Josh did, and by that I mean I got actually 17 minutes into it, which, by the way, is farther than I was able to get into What the Bleep Do We Know.
Yeah. You threw something at the television, I believe, when you were watching that.
Well,
didn't you?
yeah, that's a whole other thing. We really should do string theory at some point. But
I watched that one, too. That one is very infuriating, too, as in basketballs come out of nowhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's a sequel. I can't wait to catch that.
But regarding Expelled, it's I would recommend people go and try to watch it if you want a very good example of how logic doesn't work. You want a very clear-cut presentation of things just falling apart when you try to go from A to B to C, and just listen to Ben Stein talk on there.
Actually, there should be a class on logical fallacies where the only thing you're required to do is watch Expelled.
That'd be a
Because
Yeah.
a minute a day, that's enough.
Well, Expelled, and then, that'd be 101. 102 could be What the Bleep Do We Know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for giving us a Paul call. A Paul call.
Thanks for giving us a Paul call, Paul.
Yeah, Paul. And
Hey, you're
call.
very welcome.
All right, man. We're gonna move on to some news. We'll talk to you soon.
I'll talk to you later.
Yep. Farewell. It has to hang the up. It didn't hang. Oh, okay.
These things happen. Technology hates us.
Really,
It's God
it really
punishing us.
does. It's like we're just very bad at the whole technology thing.
Yep, just chimps flinging poop at machines and wondering why things don't work.
And I mean Josh and I in particular. I don't mean in general. It's just our podcast falls to shit sometimes. Okay.
Every time, actually.
All right. So moving on to current events. So I wanted to discuss an article that comes from those people on the island.
Lost?
Yeah, the people from Lost.
Yes, Jack. Jack.
It is an article from The Guardian, which is a British newspaper. And it's from The Guardian, UK. The article is entitled, "The New Anti-Science Assault on U.S. Schools." And, yeah, so, Josh and I are talking about the Dover trial. We're talking about evolution in particular. We're talking about the fact that this idea of creationism, or the repackaged intelligent design, has been going on for 60, 70 years.
80 years, 100 years, almost.
And yet it still doesn't go away. And now there's this whole new thing being folded in. That whole new thing is climate change.
Yep.
So the same people who are arguing for intelligent design to be taught in classrooms are also arguing for there to be an alternative theory, I guess, to climate change. Mm-hmm. They do talk about how everything is a theory and we should teach the controversy. And basically they're saying that the bill there's bills being passed in Oklahoma, in New Hampshire, in Indiana, and Missouri. So they're talking about bills introducing the idea of teaching of spending a fair amount of time teaching evolution versus teaching intelligent design, and also teaching both sides to the theory of global warming. So teaching the controversy is, this is the article goes on to state, and again, this is a British article here talking about their view as an outsider of the American public educational system, and this is just happening in their view more and more. Basically, it's these really stupid Americans is kind of their perspective. Like, what the hell are they doing?
They think we're a bunch of savages.
And there are times when I really want to agree with them, when I really think that they're right. One of the points that is made in the article is this. Not only are they trying to propagate this idea that intelligent design should be taught, they're trying to propagate this idea that all aspects of global warming, including the aspect that it's not true, should be taught. But they're also trying to advocate for school vouchers and diverting money from public schools to private schools. Many of them, guess what? Religious.
Oh, that does make sense.
And so a lot of this in the author's perspective on this, and I tend to agree, is that what they're doing is trying to make enough noise. These bills aren't going to be passed. There's plenty of precedent to say that they're not going to teach intelligent design. The Dover trial being one of them. The Scopes monkey trial, all the way back, we're talking about the Supreme Court decision in Edward versus Aguillard. There's the 2005 decision in the Dover trial. There's plenty of precedent to say that they're not going to teach intelligent design. They're not going to allow the repackaging of creationism to be taught in public schools. But what this is going to do is it's going to make enough noise. And you have state representatives like, Rick Santorum was.
Presidential wannabe Rick Santorum.
You make enough noise on this issue, then you don't get your bill passed. And then you go ahead and you make the argument, this is why we should have school vouchers. This is why we should be able to divert funds away from the public and use them for private educational institutions. And then when that happens and you start having a school voucher program where public money can be sent to a religious school, there's no more control over the curriculum. And at the religious schools, they can teach whatever batshit crazy theory that they want. They can teach you that these 747s dropped alien spirits into volcanoes and blew them up with nuclear bombs, or that the Earth was created in 6 days and then God took a nap. It doesn't matter. They're protected from the outside, except for the fact that with the school voucher program, what they're saying is they're going to use your money. They're going to use public funds.
Yeah, you're a taxpayer? Yeah, they're going to take that. They're going to take that money.
And they're going to allow you no recourse if you say, wait a minute, I do not want my tax money to go towards teaching people things that are just clearly wrong. So there's no kind of recourse for that. But, like I said, there's bills in the New Hampshire, Indiana, Oklahoma, and Missouri. So 4 different states here have legislation proposed to alter the way science is taught in biology classrooms and alter the way science is taught in earth science classrooms to discuss global warming as well. And this trend, like I pointed out, I think it has these greater political implications. I think there's more going on here than a simple trying to get it into the public classroom. But either way, it's just sad. Josh and I were talking before, as we're preparing this show today, we're just amazed at the fact that we're still having these conversations. How many times do we have to prove this? How many times do we have to go to court and go, you changed the name again? You can't just, okay, we said creationism, no good. See, you changed the name. Really? Okay, you're sneaky. Didn't catch that. It's just frustrating that, these arguments don't go away. Reason doesn't
prevail,
show a light on the area and prevail, and it's really frustrating. So this assault on U.S. schools, the anti-science assault on U.S. schools, continues to this day, and it will continue through this election cycle and into the future.
Well, this is actually a problem that I've got. Is that's exactly what they do. In fact, not to go back to the Dover trial, but one of the things that they found was that some of the documents that talked about intelligent design, they literally had just deleted creation science and put in intelligent design, and they had done it so quickly that it was like C intelligent design is
there was
like there was the C from creation, and there was the end of science attached to it. I mean, it was It was so blatant that they just changed the name.
It was clearly just a cut and paste error where they weren't careful enough to get the whole C in creationism, and that was one of the big shining examples that they used at that trial.
That they were lying.
Yes.
This is not a new theory. They keep doing this, and that's exactly what they keep doing. They keep changing the name. So you have to fight the same fight again. The fight they lost last time. And they don't even put in the work to have anything new in their fight. They just have the exact same fight again.
Yeah, and as Josh and I were talking before we started the show, it's like you're hanging your hat on you having the moral position. I know this is a little bit tangential to the actual discussion here, but you are the religious right is hanging their hat on them being the moral position, and the religious right is the one who's lying and saying we didn't just change the name. And there's tons of examples of this just flat out lying that they're doing, talking about death panels in Obamacare, doctoring pictures of Obama to make him look like he is a Muslim or is any of the things. They're just flat out trying to manipulate the public, and it's just.
I don't understand how you can assume the moral high ground by lying. You're actively lying. You know you're actively lying. You're switching a picture from right to left, so it looks like Obama's left hand is over the empty spot where his heart would be if his heart were on the other side. Yeah. I mean, it's obviously a reversed picture. We can all tell it's a damn reversed picture. I don't understand how they can hold on to the moral high ground when they're deceiving people. They're actively lying.
Yep. And before we move on to your news article there, just it's something I wanted to bring up during your discussion of the Dover trial, but we kind of got sidetracked there, is if you don't think that these things are as extreme as Josh and I are talking about, bear in mind that John E. Jones, the district judge who ruled in the Dover trial, got death threats.
He went into protective custody. He had round-the-clock protection because they were threatening with legitimate and believable threats.
What the hell is that? Death threats.
If you're right, present your evidence and be confident, like the scientific establishment, that you will eventually win.
Yeah.
That's what will happen when you're right. If you've got all the evidence that adds up perfectly and it makes sense, eventually you will win. Mm-hmm. You should be confident in that. You don't need to kill the opposition. You only need to kill the opposition when they have something that will defeat your argument. That's the only need to go to force. Only need to go to force when you can't win through argument.
This is true. Okay.
I wanted to talk a little bit about something recently in Wired magazine. They discuss in their Weird Science section, multi-cellular life evolves in laboratory. And this is from, January 17th, so this isn't even a month ago.
Okay.
An evolutionary transition that took several billion years to occur in nature has happened in a laboratory, and it needed just 60 days. Under artificial pressure to become larger, single-celled yeast became multicellular creatures. They actually showed part of the transition that happens in evolution. Granted, it was under conditions where they forced it, but that's the only way you can do it in a laboratory. You can't just wait and hope something happens and that you observe it. So, I mean, that's probably going to be the criticism of it. But basically, it was really fairly simple. There's not a lot of complexity that was needed or special genes or anything else. They just put in there that, I'll actually tell you what they did. Once per day, they shook the flasks. These are flasks that had the yeast in them. They shook them, and what rapidly settled to the bottom was used to start new cultures, and they just skimmed off the top. So they just every day went in there and shook flasks and skimmed the random crap off the top.
And seriously, that is like 90% of science is like.
And at the end of the day, they had a, quote, higher form of life. Simple as that. They made something evolve in a lab. Mm-hmm. And this harkens back to the study they did over 20 years with E. coli, where they caused E. coli to evolve. It's the exact same thing, except again, this took 60 days. They seriously just put in environmental pressures and said, let's see what happens. Mm-hmm. And it evolved. Evolution happened in a lab. This is like the fifth or sixth time this has happened.
Right.
How can anyone argue? And this is fairly drastic. It went from up to multi-cellular evolution. I mean, this is remarkable that this is not on the front page of every newspaper. Evolution proven.
Yeah.
I don't see how this is.
Well, Ray Comfort would certainly argue that this is microevolution versus macroevolution.
No, that's what happened with the E. coli. The E. coli that evolved to be able to consume. It's something that E. coli couldn't consume. I don't remember off the top of my head what it was.
I know. It's like citrate or something.
Citrate. That's exactly what it was. Is that they put them in an environment and they basically just gave them citrate. They gave them their regular food at a very low level so that the E. coli would not be able to really prosper. And they just kept them in that environment for a long time. And they also put in citrate, which they cannot consume.
And they flooded it with it. They gave if you could eat it.
If you could eat it, you would have a cornucopia of different things you could eat. It's like they put you in a room full of rocks. Full of rocks. If only you could eat rocks, you'd be fine. In 20 years, they ended up with E. coli that could consume something that it could not consume before it evolved the capacity to eat something. Much like human beings, we're omnivorous. Maybe our ancient ancestors were carnivores or herbivores or what have you, but nonetheless, now we are omnivorous because we found something else we can eat because, one thing was scarce at the time. In this particular one, they went from single-celled yeast to a multi-cellular creature. This isn't microevolution.
Yeah, it's a
they
huge
changed. This is the nature of the creature changed. They've actually got a picture here, and it's drastic how much it has changed. Mm-hmm. I mean, this isn't. There's no way you could argue this is microevolution. Ray Comfort be damned.
Well, I'm gonna make this point several times over the course of this show because it really drives me nuts. There is no such thing as microevolution. This is a concept invented
by the anti-evolutionists.
Yeah. It's absurd. It's all microevolution. It's little tiny changes over millions and millions of years. But we're gonna get to that.
Right, but I mean that's just what I want to point out is again they have proven evolution in a lab. The argument was you could never prove evolution; it takes millions of years.
Yep.
One of the folks in the Dover trial, the defendant, Behe, he said if you could do this in a lab, you'd just put in some constraints and see if it changed. Well, it had up to that point changed multiple times. There was actually an article that came out, a journal article. At the time of the trials, they couldn't use it in the trial, but
I remember that.
Yeah. Then there's this afterwards where it changed not slightly. You couldn't even argue if microevolution were something you were postulating, this still wouldn't be it. The nature of this creature has changed drastically, and when they breed, they become multicellular organisms. They don't degrade back into being single-celled organisms. They continue being multicellular organisms. This is a new creature that evolved in a laboratory. So, I mean, once again, evolution, touchdown.
Yeah, and of course it'll be ignored by the intelligent design proponents.
Of course. All right, moving on.
All right, so, I'm just going to chat a little bit about evolution, which, it wound up being a little... Evolution is such a wide area of study that it was a little bit difficult to kind of focus on what exactly to talk about. I struggled a little bit with that, so I'm just going to go through a little bit of Aristotle, a little bit of Darwin, and a little bit of Conservapedia, and I think that's going to be a good time. So let's just start off evolution, the general concept of species changing over time. And this is a story that kind of starts with, well, a lot of people would say Aristotle. It actually starts with Empedocles, who Aristotle kind of quoted. Mm-hmm. There's some discussion about what Plato said and stuff like that, and that's kind of more your area than mine.
Well,
but
Plato wasn't much of a scientist, though. He was definitely an idea man.
Sure.
Aristotle was more the scientist.
So Empedocles theorized that some sort of natural selection occurred in nature in the past that made the forms of life be what they were, what they presented to him. He didn't see it as an ongoing process, but rather that naturalistic causes resulted in the variety of life that existed. Okay, mm-hmm. So and Aristotle basically summarized this, and he's kind of the name that comes up when people talk about way back what was originally thought in philosophy regarding evolution, propagation of species, and so on. Empedocles' idea, but Aristotle's more famous. So, that's kind of how that works.
That's how you get credit.
So philosophy, since then, basically, I mean, they've kind of touched on origin of species, diversity. They never really came up with any significant conclusions. I would argue that philosophy is a bunch of fluffy crap. Josh would probably fist fight me over that, but
I would punch you in the face.
That's a whole other thing. It's a good thing you're like 10 feet away, so that's fine. So here's the thing, though. Between Aristotle and Darwin, we have something significant that happened. We have agriculture. Agriculture over that time, before and after, but also over that time, was becoming a scientific endeavor. What started off simply as, how can I get a better yield on crops? How can I get more meat from the animals that I'm raising? Became a practice of understanding horticulture, animal husbandry, cross-pollination, any number of different things in order to get a better crop yield, get a better yield from your animals, the whole thing. So this was, like it or not, this is the beginning of our understanding of evolution. If we take, something like Gregor Mendel, who made big pea plants and little pea plants, he was able to cross-pollinate them and make ever bigger plants and so on and so forth. This is all because of evolution. And this was all originally used in order to feed us, because we were hungry.
Well, because science is, generally speaking, used to promote some good.
Yes. Yeah. So, we learned to take the two highest yielding plants, cross-pollinate them to start a line of high-yielding plants. We didn't know that this was evolution. We only knew that we were hungry. So these principles were never used to address the idea of the origin of species. The thing is, though, that after Darwin's theory comes out, which I'm going to get to, if you go back in time and look at all the stuff that we learned about animal husbandry, about horticulture, and all, it all fits. Like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Oh wow, we were practicing evolutionary theory and didn't know.
Right. I was talking earlier about the differences in size between my biology textbook and of pandas and people. And one of the things I wanted to mention, in my 1,071-page biology textbook, it is not a textbook solely on evolution. It's a textbook on all aspects of biology. The thing is, every single page of that textbook fits in theoretically with every other page. What I mean by that is it's all a cohesive whole. It is evolution works because of our understanding of genetics, our understanding of mutations, our understanding of all these different aspects of life. Our understanding of physiology is all it all fits together. And that's something that I think is missed by those who are, well, you can't just, say that this is just a theory. Well, yeah, but everything
agrees with the theory. I mean,
yes,
it's the coherence theory of truth. Again, in philosophy, if this seems true and matches everything else that we know that seems true, it's probably kind of true. I mean, that's fairly accurate. That's well supported.
We haven't found one thing yet that doesn't fit, that we haven't been able to go, well, the reason why it doesn't fit is because of A, B, and C, and look, now it does.
Yep.
Okay. So along comes Chucky Boy. That's what I call Charles Darwin. I call him Chucky Boy. Not like that doll from that movie.
Yeah, that'd be creepy. I wouldn't want that guy riding on my beagle.
No. Although he probably could ride a beagle. That seemed to be about the right size.
Wow. See? Coherence theory of truth. Yep. Charles Darwin was a doll.
This does make who wrote a dog.
Yep.
Okay. All right. November 24th, 1859, Darwin published the book entitled On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. The name was changed later to just On the Origin of Species, but that was the original title on its publication date.
Yeah, that's what you pay publishers for.
Yeah.
You can clean that up.
So Darwin published his work some 30 years after taking a voyage on the HMS Beagle. Darwin came from a very wealthy family. His father was a medical doctor. He went to medical school. He's supposed to be a medical doctor, too. So if you, according to like some Darwin apologeticists, because they do exist, just check the Wikipedia page.
Oh yeah.
Darwin was more interested in the natural sciences than he was in medicine.
Uh-huh.
And all the furry animals and fuzzy plants was what he really liked.
Aww.
What's kind of a little bit closer to the truth, is that he couldn't really hack being a medical doctor. He didn't do very well in his studies. He apparently was a bit squeamish, and so really wasn't really cut out to be a medical doctor. However, you would be too, because remember, at the time that Darwin was studying to be a medical doctor, they didn't have that, what's it called? Drugs.
Ah, yes.
Anesthesia. You're talking about cutting into people while they're still writhing around and screaming.
Strap him down. Give him leather between his teeth. It'll be fine.
Yeah, so I don't, I certainly, and this is coming from a person who is fully convinced that just give me a scalpel, I could do a back surgery, no problem, but not without.
What if the guy was writhing around screaming?
Not if the guy was writhing around screaming. So, anyway, the voyage on the HMS Beagle. He joined the expedition as a geologist and naturalist. Darwin made a huge number of observations. It was a 5-year voyage. What kind of gets the most attention were the observations on the Galapagos Islands, and specifically the finches on the Galapagos archipelago. The finches who were separated by large bodies of water weren't able to interrelate and interbreed. There were different seeds on different islands, and the beaks were shaped differently in order for them to crack open the seeds and use them as a foodstuff. And so that was kind of, according to the lore, what kind of triggered Darwin's little brain there to go,
that's the story, yeah.
Wait a minute. So, these species of finches, they seem to be specialized. And so he comes up with this theory of natural selection and how it could accomplish all of these goals. So the theory presented in The Origin of Species is based upon all 5 years of these observations. It's the finches that gets the most credit, and from that comes the idea of natural selection. Yep, yeah, we're just limping along here. So there's a lot of back and forth in evolutionary theory. Before Darwin, there was the work of Lamarck.
Good old Lamarck.
There was Mendel. There's a ton of other people who kind of paved the way to our understanding of speciation. It was Darwin who had this one big idea of natural selection. Like Gregor Mendel, for example, he did, as I talked before about, he did the experiments of crossbreeding pea plants. Darwin was the one who simply theorized that as Mendel chose the best offspring, when he was selecting for height, nature could basically do the same thing.
Right, the ones that are least well suited to their environment die.
Right. I mean, for example, if the pea plants are in an environment where the taller they grow, the more sunlight they get, and if the more sunlight they get, the more they're able to generate food through photosynthesis, then there's a selection towards the taller pea plants.
Right. Now, produce more seeds produce more plants, all of a sudden they overrun, like an invading species. We hear about that all the time.
Absolutely. So Darwin's ideas were great. They were original, groundbreaking. It is important to remember that they were only ideas to him at that point. There's been a ton of work, some of which, Josh, you highlighted in your most recent news article. There's been a ton of work to substantiate the ideas, and a lot of the work that's been done has proven this natural selection theory of evolution to a very high degree of certainty. But it did all start off with Darwin having this idea. So that's kind of, some history about where Darwin came from, where the theory of evolution came from. Darwin, like a lot of, one of the things that the intelligent design people love to do, the creationists, the religious of all stripes kind of love to do, is they think that we have saints. They think that we have leaders or godheads.
What would Darwin do?
Yeah.
What would Carl Sagan do? Yeah.
Whether it's Darwin or Hitchens or Carl Sagan or, Sam Harris, these people have good ideas, and I like to hear them talk. Well, Darwin doesn't talk much anymore, neither does Hitchens, but
you don't talk Darwin?
Not recently.
I go into a trance and I enter an otherworldly state, transcendentally doing a thing, and then Darwin comes to me and he tells me to kill Paul. That you don't get that?
I'm glad you have thus far not listened to Darwin, because he kind of sounds like a dick. Well, I'm just saying, he's saying you should kill me. I take affront to that. Okay, so Darwin is not a mythological figure. Darwin's not a saint. He was flat out wrong about some things. He was misunderstood about some things. Like for example, you're talking about Darwin's eye. I think creationists love to throw back that Darwin himself had this question about the eye, except for the fact that it's not really the way that went down.
Well, that's even so. That's good. That's good to have somebody that still had questions. If you've got all the answers, you start a religion.
Yeah.
If you don't have all the answers, you have questions, you promote science. That we like it when people don't have all the answers. It gives us something to do.
This is true. Okay, so let's just talk about evolution itself for a second. Now, it's important to understand the purpose of the word theory in the theory of evolution. Now, this comes up a lot. People argue about this on YouTube, make all kinds of ridiculous statements, but I'm going to say something here that you may not have considered thus far.
Okay.
Despite what the idiot creationists say, the theory of evolution is not that evolution exists. The theory of evolution is that natural selection is responsible for it.
Yes.
That's the difference. So if you blow the theory of evolution out of the water, you know what you're left with? Evolution. You're still left with evolution. You just don't have a mechanism. The theory is the mechanism as to how evolution can occur. A mechanism that's been substantiated through laboratory results, is reflected in the historical record, and a whole number of different other points. But that is the thing that is the theory. It wouldn't be right to say evolution is a fact, because that's an incorrect use of the word as well. But the theory is a proposal on how it happens. That's just an important point that I think is missed a lot. And people do debate back and forth about what theory means, blah, blah, blah. So, there's 2 points to natural selection. Okay, there is variation. Well, there's 2 points to evolution according to the Darwinian model. There's variation and there's natural selection. Okay, so let's talk about variation for a second. Variation is in any population, individuals are likely to vary from each other as each bears novel traits or combinations of traits. And this is very simple. It's very evident. Josh, you and I are not the same.
We are not. That is true.
We have different hair. We're different heights. We have many different things.
I'm dashing. You're sort of like a drunken chimp.
I'm a little frumpy.
Yeah, there. Yeah.
We have different bone structure. We have different hair color. We have different eye color. There's variation across all. Even in terms of genetic twins, there's still variation, but that's not something we need to necessarily get too involved in. The 2 sources of this variation are genetic recombination and mutation. Mm-hmm. Okay, so genetic recombination is simply, your mother had blonde hair, your father had brown hair, and you're going to come out with however the allele goes together. You could have blonde hair, you could have brown hair, you could have some variation.
I could have brown hair with my blonde wife, then we look at my children, see what happens.
Right, yeah. So that's the genetic recombination. And the other thing is mutation. So if you look at DNA, which is, the building blocks for proteins in the cell, there's 3 types of mutations that can occur with DNA. There's a point mutation, what's called a point mutation, an insertion mutation, and a deletion mutation. Mm-hmm. So if you think about DNA is a long string of codons.
Right.
And so a point mutation is, it's supposed to be a C and the system screwed up and you got an A there instead. Mm-hmm. An insertion mutation is, there's supposed to be 5 C's in a row, and now there's 6, and one of them's either a C or a T or an A or a G, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Right, there's more stuff.
Yeah, you added one
information
more,
or data.
One more Lego block, basically. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then deletion is simply the opposite, just removing. So you can either change one of the base pairs, you can add a base pair, you can subtract a base pair. And those simple changes to the genetic code, three base pairs make an amino acid, amino acids make protein, and up and up and up goes the chain. And that's where all of our, existence and identity comes from. You start changing the genetic code, you're going to get results out the other end. Now, those results may be wacky, may be
useless or detrimental.
99.999% of the time they are going to be useless. They are going to be detrimental, or at least ineffectual.
Incidental.
But this is one thing that the religious in general and the evolutionists in particular, or the creationists in particular, seem to struggle with is time is really long.
It really is.
Millions and millions and millions of years have given the mutations the opportunity to create some things that when they were good, well, those stuck around. Mm-hmm. So that's that. Now, so that's how we get the variability into this idea of, well, we have two different things going on. We have a pea plant that's taller than another pea plant. Now let's talk about natural selection. Genotypes that are best adapted to the prevailing conditions are more likely to survive and reproduce. This is, again, just going through the example. The taller pea plant that gets the more sunlight is more likely to propagate. And it's very simple. That's evolution in a nutshell. There's some specifics. There's whether there's this hypothesis of steady slope versus punctuated equilibrium. These are all, kind of specific details in there for the finer points of evolution. But in general, the idea is, as presented, there's simply variation and natural selection. Okay? So, that being said, these two ideas have been, tested. Laboratory results have proven them. The fossil record shows them. And yet we still go back and forth with creationists who make all of these arguments. The internet is just a spectacular thing.
It is ripe.
Full of just insanity and craziness and blah, blah, blah.
Ignorance and misunderstanding and misinterpretation and deliberate misleading of people.
Yes. And so with that in mind, I decided, and I kind of, one of the places I started off in preparing for this whole discussion on evolution was a website which is a favorite of mine.
Yes.
I know you're a fan of it as well, Josh. That website would be Conservapedia.
Oh, I love Conservapedia.
Its proper title is Conservapedia, the trustworthy encyclopedia. Because they're trustworthy, they're honest. I do think they call Barack Obama a Muslim, or at least say he wasn't born in the country. They say a lot of fascinating things, which are clearly bullshit. But one of the things they have on their main page is 15 questions that no evolutionist could answer. So Josh and I decided we're going to go through these quickly and just see, try our hand at them. See what we can come up with. Again, we don't have any research material in front of us. We don't have access to, a whole ton of scientific journals or a library or anything like that.
These are going to be off the tops of our heads.
Yeah, let's just see what we can come up with. So question number 1. In the 15 questions for evolutionists, question number 1, I'll ask to you, Josh, how did life originate?
That's a fine question. And, there are 4 or 5 theories, but the big problem is that's not really part of the question of evolution.
Nope, nothing to do with evolution.
It's sort of a tertiary question, very important question. It's one that people are working on. People are trying to figure out, but it's not part of evolution. It's not, change over time.
No.
It's not really appropriate. It's outside the bounds.
It's not natural selection.
Yep.
It's not variation. How did life originate? I don't know. We have some theories. We have some ideas. We've been able to form amino acids in a test tube. There's been some question about whether or not that is legitimate. Either way, this doesn't prove or disprove evolution in any way. It has nothing to do with it.
It's a side question that people interested in evolution may explore.
Sure.
Not part of evolution.
Oh yeah. Well, if evolution's true, why do forks have 4 tines?
That's a fine question. And what about shrimp forks?
Yeah.
3 tines.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Although that may be proof of evolution.
Hot dog forks come at 2 sometimes. All right.
The devil has 3 on his fork.
That's true. Number 2, how did the DNA code originate?
That sort of falls similarly into the same category.
It really does, yeah.
There are also people exploring this, but again, that's a hard question. And nobody denies that's a hard question. There are people looking into it. How is this? It's a coding process.
Yeah. Well, there's a little bit of an answer to that question as best as I can is, so one of the tools that life uses in order to propagate, reproduce, process food, so on and so forth, are proteins. Proteins being the combination of amino acids. Amino acids and the down the chain forming of proteins from the amino acids comes from a set of instructions, which comes from the RNA, and that comes from the DNA. So it's all DNA to RNA to amino acids to proteins. Proteins are one of the things that we found to be necessary for life. There's no debate on whether or not proteins are inherently necessary for the life of some plants and animals and life forms on the earth. Now, how did the DNA code originate? Well, the short answer, I don't know. The little bit longer answer is there must be an explanation as to the cell, the life form, whatever it is, needs to be able to form these proteins.
It could be, and here's the problem, it could just be coincidence that they happened to fall in a certain way, and that was beneficial. And there you go. It's not really all that complicated. One of the problems I have with them is that they believe, again, everything has intentionality.
Yeah.
The proteins fall, 7 or 8 different ways, and some of them kind of work and some of them don't, and one works really well. Yeah, that's the one that we come from.
Yep.
Everything else disappeared. This functioned really, really, really well, and it explodes all over the planet. That's fairly simple.
Yep.
Why does it happen that way? There's not always a why. Sometimes it's a how. How did it happen that way? That's a question they could answer.
Sure.
Why? There's that again, that implies intentionality, which is something that science tries to steer clear from.
Absolutely. Okay, so number 3, how could mutations, accidental copying mistakes, create the huge volumes of information in the DNA of living things?
Well, accidental copying mistakes being a bit of a leading way to word that aside,
Yes,
I believe you discussed that already, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is just an example. The question is, how could it create the huge volumes of information of the DNA in living things? Time. The answer is time. You don't seem to understand that we're talking about millions and millions of years.
So we've got a scanner at work, and sometimes it scans things perfectly. Sometimes, though, it jams a page, and then one page gets either stretched over 2 pages, sometimes a page is skipped, sometimes a page is half on one, half on another. These are all things that happen, and that's one scanner that we use, we scan maybe 1,000, 2,000 pages a week?
Yeah, I'd say that's about right.
Yeah, and that happens 100 times. Imagine us scanning those pages for, I don't know, 1 million years, a couple thousand pages a week. Yeah, how many different combinations of pages could we end up with? And if each one of those is an attempt at success, some of them will be better, some will be worse. And
But
that's just what happens.
Either way, there's going to be mounds and mounds of new information, whether it's good or bad, and that's the answer to the question.
Yep, time.
Okay, so this one I think we should blow quickly through, but I don't quite understand what they're asking.
Okay.
Why is natural selection, a principle recognized by creationists, taught as evolution as if it explains the origin of the diversity of life?
The
you
origin
understand?
of the diversity of life.
Do you understand that question?
Well, first off, the origin of the diversity of life, I don't know exactly what that means. But no, I don't understand that question. So yes, that's a good question to put to evolutionists because they will look at you like you're stupid.
Why is natural selection taught as evolution? Because it's part of the theory of evolution?
That evolutionists came up with that and said, hey, look, that explains our question.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's Darwin's mechanism. Okay. Number 5. How did new biochemical pathways, which involve multiple enzymes working together in sequence, originate?
Which ones? Because there's probably an explanation for whichever ones you're asking about.
Yeah.
But mostly copying errors. Some things are successful. There's lateral changes that promote something new that doesn't happen. I mean, again, back to the E. coli, if I remember correctly, they had 4 lateral changes in a row that didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. But because of those 4 changes, this other thing could happen, which couldn't happen to the original E. coli. This other thing happened, which allowed them to move forward. So, again, time.
And, there's also this one, there's a little bit more of a specific answer to this question if you are a crazy person like me and took 2 to 3 years in studying biochemistry.
Look at me and my biochemistry.
Well, no, it's just absurdly useless information that's filling my brain. But here's the thing. Multiple enzymes working together in sequence. Here's the thing about enzymes. They really only do like 4 different things. Some enzymes cleave a protein. Some enzymes add a hydrogen to a protein, or remove an oxygen, or add a sulfur, but they only do a handful of things. And so
if you've got 5, there's going to be the combination of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 5, 1, 3, 4. There's going to be a limited number of combinations of things that they could do.
Yes. Yeah.
And they will easily slip from one to another. The beneficial ones will stay.
Yeah. And the enzymes, another argument that's made is they act on specific substrates, specifically shaped molecules, except for that's kind of sort of maybe not very true. They act on specific molecules, yes, but other molecules that are kind of similar fit in there.
Isn't that kind of how drugs work?
That's exactly the point I was going to.
Yeah.
Ibuprofen, ketoprofen, all your different non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs are slightly different shaped. They all fit in the same receptor.
So they accomplish the same thing, more or less.
Some of them fit in the receptor better. Mm-hmm. Some of them are harder to get into the receptor and harder to get out of the receptor. Those ones last longer. Mm-hmm. See, so I mean, how did the enzymes work together in sequence? It was because you had a bunch of different enzymes and a bunch of different things happened, and it all kind of works together. And it turns out that this is a mutually beneficial path.
Again, the ones that are successful stay around. The ones that aren't sort of fall by the wayside. And that's just the idea. Again, it's time and repetition. Mm-hmm. Things happen over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, and when they're useful, and when they're not, they usually either sit in the background or fade away.
Yep. Okay, so number 6. Really? Okay.
Yep.
Living things look like they were designed, so how do evolutionists know that they were not designed?
They don't. We don't. They postulate, and they have evidence that shows there is another mechanism that is not designed that works just as well, which we can study. So we study that one, and when it turns out that works, we run with that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to let you answer 7 straight up. I think you're qualified to do so. How did multicellular life originate?
Evolution.
There you go.
Okay.
And this is
I believe we just discussed that.
You discussed a scientific, an article in a newspaper about a scientific study which they had the origination of multicellular life from single-celled organisms.
Basically, what they did was they worked cooperatively over and over and over again until they only worked cooperatively, and then they became multicellular.
Yep.
Very simple.
Okay, how did sex originate?
I don't know, but that sounds like a party.
Yeah, the quick answer on that, sex originated as a way to increase variability in the genetic lineage.
And it turned out it was really useful for that. So again, most species that are large and complicated use sex.
Yep.
There are still some that don't. Mm-hmm. But when it's big and you're complicated like humans, that's really useful.
Yep. Okay, number 9, why are the expected countless millions of transitional fossils missing?
Okay, may I?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Every time they look for a transitional fossil, they seem to find it, and the idea of transitional fossils is silly considering that we're in a steady state of evolution all the time.
Yep.
But yeah, they keep finding them, and seriously, you can't keep saying, well, what about you found between A and C, what about between this new one, B? What about between A and B?
Yeah.
What about? You could do that forever. Seriously, they've been finding thousands of them.
Yep.
There would be billions and billions and billions of transitional fossils.
Yeah, every fossil would be a transitional fossil.
Right. They keep finding thousands of new ones all the time. You can't keep asking the same question.
And, I wanted to state here, this is where, so Matt Dillahunty, who's president of the Atheist Community of Austin and the host of the Atheist Experience, the really enjoyable public access show down there in Texas.
Oh, yeah, I like this one, yeah.
He, in his conversation with Ray Comfort, who we had on the show, Ray Comfort brought up the same point. Where's the transitional fossils? And his response was, do you agree that languages, the Romance languages,
yeah.
Latin, or Italian, Spanish, French, come from a Latin origin? And if you agree to that point, then show me the mother who spoke Latin whose child speaks Italian.
Yep. And that actually is incredibly clear.
Yeah. Where's that transitional step? Yeah. No, it doesn't work that way. Okay. How do living fossils remain unchanged over supposed hundreds of millions of years if evolution has changed worms into humans in the same time frame?
Did we evolve from worms?
They may be in the genetic lineage somewhere, sure.
That's neither here nor there. Mostly it's because evolution doesn't work the same on everyone. It works consistently, and if you have a good plan, like people always argue with me, they say, well, humans are the height of evolution. And I say, well, no, I'd say that sharks are pretty good.
Yeah.
They've been around basically the same and unchanged for a really long time.
There's been no selective push.
Right, except for the fact that they have changed.
Well, yeah.
Even the living fossils are actually different animals. The changes are really slight because the basic design worked. Why do we still drive on cars that have 4 tires? The basic design works. That's a good design. It just sort of stays that way.
Yep. Okay, this one is really annoying. Okay, how did blind chemistry create mind/intelligence, meaning, altruism, and morality?
Well, first off, altruism and morality, we actually have good explanations for.
There's a genetic benefit to there being altruism. There's a genetic benefit to morality. We're pack animals. Now, I'm assuming you're talking about human beings here.
Let's presume.
That seems to be what they're doing. And if you're talking about human beings that are pack animals, you're talking about a benefit to passing on the genetic information by having a society that protects you.
And we're really smart. We don't need just genetic information. We need learned information. We need to be trained on how to function because we have a complicated society. More complicated society gets, the more necessary it is to train people even after birth. The only evolutionary push you get for that is the capacity to learn these things. So, if anything, evolution really just taught us how to be ready to learn to be human.
Yeah.
And that's a much simpler concept than, altruism and morality, even if you take into account kin altruism or any number of other things, which, are actually fine theories. Now, what is the other one? Meaning? I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
I make up meaning all the time.
Sure.
And mind/intelligence, again, you're going to have to define those. I don't know what that means. I know what brains are.
Yeah.
There's a whole series of people that are trying to figure out what mind is, and they don't have a good answer already. So,
I think that pretty much covers it.
Yeah.
So, why is evolutionary just so storytelling tolerated?
what?
I don't know what that means.
I think they're saying that since the theory of evolution has so many holes in it, transitional fossils and the like, why do we tolerate, just propagating that theory?
No, I think that they're saying the Goldilocks theorem. I think that they're saying, why is it that
really?
Maybe?
No, actually, no, I can see that now. That, we developed because everything was just perfect for humans at this time and just perfect at that time. And, there was a time that we, came out of the water onto land and it was just perfect for that and all those things. And that's why it didn't happen any other time.
And it's not just perfect. That's where the selective push comes from.
No, that's true. Well, yeah, actually, that is true.
We changed to adapt as perfectly as we could to what was extant. That's it. Okay. Where are the scientific breakthroughs due to evolution?
I'm going to go back to, antibiotics and vaccines. Those are going to be the two that I'm going to hang my hat on.
I'm going to go to agriculture.
Ooh, that's nice.
Farming, animal husbandry. There's plenty. Okay. Science involves experimenting to figure out how things work, how they operate. Why is evolution, a theory about history, taught as if it is the same as the operational science?
Wow, that's just a wild misunderstanding there.
Yeah.
A wild misunderstanding.
Cosmology.
Evolution. Yeah.
Cosmology. Cosmology is the scientific pursuit of the understanding of the nature of the universe. We study the stars.
Well, the joy of something like evolution is that they're animals that are nearby. Cosmology, we need to have a theory. We need to back it up with math. We need to back it up with theorems and that sort of thing. And then eventually, we just wait. And something will show us that we're right.
Yeah.
We'll get an event that says, hey, remember line 35 of your theorem? You thought that would follow line 34? Mm-hmm. Look, there in the sky. Yeah. It does. And there you go. We're just observing the world and waiting for our opportunity to prove our theory right. And it has happened time and time and time again.
Yes. And, pure science is significant and important. It was, the idea that we had that maybe we should go to the moon. And in order to do that, we created a nutritious drink for astronauts called Tang. And now society benefits by there being Tang. Yep. Just saying. Okay.
And Sunny Delight, which I think is just Tang in liquid form.
Might be. Okay. And the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Why is a fundamentally religious idea a dogmatic belief system that fails to explain the evidence taught in science classes? Now, I have an answer for this one.
Oh, I was going to say, what is that?
My answer is because you batshit crazy morons keep trying to push intelligent design and creationism into the classrooms. That is why a dogmatic belief system that fails to explain the evidence, it's not taught in scientific classrooms. You're trying to get it taught in scientific classrooms. You just defined what you are.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely just absurd. It's not a religious idea. It's not a dogmatic belief system. It doesn't fail to explain the evidence.
It actually explains the evidence really well.
And if you really still think that, I don't know what I could say to change your mind, but I will certainly do it if you...
God told me evolution's real.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going with.
All right, so, that's Conservapedia's 15 questions that neither Josh or I could ever possibly answer. And there are a fair number that we couldn't answer because they were just ridiculous questions. But, okay, so we have a caller who's been holding for quite a while, so I want to
we've been playing back and forth.
So let's see if we can talk to Chris here. Chris, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, sorry about the holding for so long, but how can we help you today?
No, that's fine. I was just calling. I saw this your podcast. You use that image often labeled like the ascent of man, and you see it's a iconic image that a lot of people recognize, and just how it reinforces misconceptions. How they're both people who accept the reality of evolution and those who deny it. In that it implies the evolution is a linear and directional, progressive, goal-oriented process with like an ultimate goal of modern humans. And this is, I think, how the general public views evolution. And the goal-oriented aspect of it really, I think, resonates, with a religious way of thinking. And it kind of falls in with how you mentioned how they view maybe Darwin is like our saint. Evolution is our explanation for something more than what it does explain. I just thought maybe I'd mention this and see what you guys had to say about that.
Well, I don't disagree with anything you're saying regarding evolution not having an end goal or anything like that. The linearity of the picture that I put up as the promo for the show, I would say that you are certainly implying a bunch of stuff that's not necessarily there. Now, that's not to say that most people who look at that image don't infer the same thing.
Yeah, I do have to say, Paul, that Chris, we had a lot of trouble finding a picture to go with this week's show because we couldn't find anything that was clear and showed, hey, evolution. But yeah, the fact that there's I'm going to say chimp on the left, and there's a man on the right. And by the way, it's a white man with fairly, sandy, dirty blonde hair. Maybe it's a light brown. That's the image that was beaten into people's skulls, and that this picture is a large part of the reason that a lot of people argue that, I wasn't descended from monkeys. Yeah, the picture is inherently flawed.
I mean, I wasn't so much criticizing you using it, but it's also one of those things that comes up because that's really where people object to it, and it's really a complete misunderstanding of evolution. Not to mention that people tend to think of it in terms of humans when they object to it, but when you talk about yeast or bacteria or plants, you don't get that thought, but they're also not thinking of that as being the same process.
You're right, and it's funny. Right before we started the show, Josh and I were talking about. We were actually finishing up watching the Nova special on the Dover trial. And one of the things that they mentioned was that the idea that man descended from ape-like forms or chimpanzee-like forms is one of the most controversial aspects of evolution. And the thing that Josh and I were talking about is that just goes to show that your objection is a religious one, and it's one of your own personal bias towards it. Because if that's the most controversial, it's not the least substantiated with evidence. It's not the weakest part of any of the aspect of the theory. It's just the part that freaks you out because you think that God made you.
Yeah, it's the part you don't like, not the part that's unsupported.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you called in and kind of pointed all that out. I in my own defense, as Josh pointed out, I have 300 pixels times 300 pixels to try and explain what the hell we're going to be
talking. Like a web or a tree. Huh?
What was that?
Yeah. I said, of course, you couldn't fit like a whole web or tree.
I would have liked if we could have gotten a good web on there that showed the different variations and how things go in one direction and another direction, and evolution is not a linear process or a hierarchical process. But,
actually, I did find there was a web that I had. It didn't work. So, but yeah, I mean, at least you can call up and make the point. And I'm glad that you did. That it is, we do have these biases, and I think the creationists and the intelligent design proponents are the ones who especially have these biases. I think it's a linear chain, like the whole worms to human beings thing. Well, yes, worms turned into frogs, which turned into birds, which turned into
Yeah, they use the modern, versions also, as if like, modern day worms are turning into humans somehow.
Right, and even if they were worm-like creatures, then they would not be the worms that we have. Because again, like I was saying, people make that argument that humans are the height of evolution, and I would counter with horseshoe crabs.
Sure.
They basically have been the same for like 1 million years. Horseshoe crabs have not changed. That's a good design. We've been around for 100,000 years. Maybe depending on how you look at what humans are, you give us 200, 300,000 years max.
Yeah.
And that's assuming that proto-man was really human beings. The hierarchical nature is a problem. There's also another problem that I have is that they always talk about, well, if man descended from apes, why are there still apes?
Oh, yeah.
And my problem is, first off, man didn't descend from apes per se. And second, why couldn't there still be apes? There's 2 bands of apes. They're identical. Yeah. And then one goes off
that's
and
again the linear thinking.
Right.
Yeah. They're influenced by society and or influenced by the world and their environment. The other group is not. So one group will evolve into something else. One group is better suited, so it basically stays the same.
Yeah.
Why would that not be possible? And again, that's even giving them the assumption that man descended from apes.
Yeah.
Their argument still does not follow.
And
we know that's not the case anyway.
It frustrates me because I've had with people who fully believe that evolution is the mechanism through which all species differentiated, who still have argued to my face countless times that we are descended from monkeys. Oh, don't tell me we're not descended from monkeys. We are descended from monkeys. You moron, no. We have a common ancestor. There's branches, just like Chris was talking about. So, yeah.
Yeah, those weren't monkeys. I mean, they weren't monkeys in the way that we know. So maybe they were kind of like monkeys, but really, seriously, you need to do more studying. So thank you, Chris, very much. And I'm shaking my finger at Paul right now for using this picture because this picture actually has received a lot of flack.
All right, you want to do the promo for next week then? You want to design that? Can we just do that?
No.
Maybe we'll have Chris do it.
Yes.
All right, Chris. Thanks for giving us a call. Yeah, I mean, it is, in a limited amount of space, the information that you're trying to convey, it's like...
Well, the problem is that picture does represent evolution to a lot of people, because a lot of people had the transition of man as the picture in their class, especially the one that we're familiar with, because it goes back, to like the 40s and the 50s, they started using that.
Yeah.
It's a staple in our understanding of evolution.
Yeah.
And this one, I'm looking at the picture, that really is basically a chimp that we're evolving from there. And it is a very linear transition. And I will say, though, the second guy in the picture does basically look like a Middle Easterner. Why is a Middle Easterner less evolved than what I'm going to call as an Aryan? So the picture itself is a little racist as well. But, that's neither here nor there.
I chose the picture for the size, the color, and the contrast.
Not because you're German, huh? I'm just saying. I'm just saying, buddy.
I'm Polish, too, so I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. All right.
Buffalo humor.
Okay, so, that's evolution, I'd say, in a nutshell. I think we got that covered. So Josh and I are going to move on here to You're Wrong. And let me tell you why.
All right.
So we got just a few minutes left, and we'll have a fun little debate here. So today's topic is, we should protect endangered species in order to prevent them from going extinct.
Okay, so that's the positive statement. All right, I'm going to flip the coin. I'm going to say heads is we should, tails is we should not.
All right, you take the coin.
I'm taking the coin, okay. And it's heads. Here we go.
All right, so you are to argue.
I'm taking the positive, that we should protect endangered species in order to prevent them from going extinct.
Okay, well, since a fair amount of money is spent on this whole process, and I think the question as to whether or not it's appropriate is one that's actually up for debate here, I'd say that you have a position you need to support.
All right. The tree of life, as we know it, the varied nature of existence from one animal species.
Life, huh?
It's in the mind. It's fresh in the mind. The varied nature of life and existence from your panda bears to your alligators to your whales. This is something that we don't know what we can. I mean, strictly from a selfish point of view, we don't know what we can learn from them. their biology, the way they interact, the sonar, the communication, why panda bears eat vegetarian diets, even though they're basically bears. I mean, there's any number of things that we can still learn. The diversity is also something which supports the ecosystem. We don't know what we're doing. So as human beings encroach upon environments, and I know that a lot of species have gone extinct over time. Human beings have caused the largest mass death of different species since we've been around, and especially in the last couple of 100 years. We have caused mass death by human beings encroaching on their environment, and we know that happens from different species all the time. We have done this on a scale unprecedented. And what it is doing to the environment, what this species of bug does, what that animal does, how it guards the environment. The environment is a very complicated, let's call it a mathematical formula. You take one out, it doesn't change anything. You take 2, 5, 10, you totally change the nature of the formula, and you end up with crazy, radical change. This is something which is unforeseen. We should support the diversity, find out what we can from the animals, allow the ecosystem to function in basically the way it had functioned, all right, and try and keep the planet, I hate to say it, working like the machine that it always has. It's been working this way more or less for the last couple million years, and we can't radically change it that much. We need to keep the species, and that way, if need be, they can be reintroduced into an environment if the environment is detrimentally affected by that. I don't think that's rocket surgery.
Well, the thing is, number one, I don't think we are the mass propagators of species death.
I wish I had numbers, because the numbers are shocking.
Number two, this human-centric position that we have, that we are somehow outside of the bounds of evolution, of natural selection, that somehow we are the guiding angels that should be controlling who lives and who dies, what species are able to evolve and propagate. I don't think I am. I think basically what we're doing is we are artificially manipulating the environment in order to keep species alive that basically haven't cut the mustard.
The problem is we've already artificially damaged the environment.
No, we haven't. We are natural. We cannot artificially damage the environment. The damage that we've done to the environment is natural damage. We're animals on this planet like any other animal, and your idea that we're not is just arrogant and snooty.
I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that. I'm saying the anomaly, the natural anomaly that is human, is changing things more rapidly. We're doing things. We're producing any number of gases. We're tearing down any number of different ecosystems of trees. We're killing any number of animals that live in the oceans that function as part of the machine. We're doing this under the arrogant assumption, the same one, that we are somehow different than the environment, that we're not part of the machine. So we're throwing monkey wrench after monkey wrench into a well-functioning machine.
We're doing what any animal does given our tools and capability.
The problem is we're doing it better than any animal has or could. And while that's, perfectly natural, doesn't make it bad. Being natural isn't necessarily bad. I mean, there is a moral judgment to be made for my survival.
Mm-hmm. And what does this have to do with anything regarding whether or not we should continue to keep animals? The panda bear is a great example. The panda bear basically can't at this point live in the wild at all.
Right.
We keep it in zoos. And, we feed it. What the hell does it eat? It eats
bamboo.
Bamboo. And we don't do anything in order to reintroduce it to the wild. We keep it in a museum like a pet, and that's due to our human arrogance. The panda should be extinct. It should go away. Money and resources should not be spent on that. And yet it is. And it's because we think that we are somehow better and morally superior to other
I don't think it's moral superiority in any way, shape, or form. It's not moral superiority. We simply have an additional capacity, a capacity that's new. It's a new capacity. I mean, it's something that has not existed before in the past. I mean, it's fairly simple that we can do more than any other animal has. We are a shocking and interesting expression of nature. That's all. But the problem with that is that it is something brand new. And we go around just doing whatever we want, like we have, for the last few million years. Every facet, every expression of human beings, from before human beings long ago, every animal does this. The problem is we now can see the formula that we're messing with.
Okay.
So perhaps lions should stop eating antelopes into extinction. That's fine, they should, but that doesn't mean that they're aware of that. We are aware of what we're doing and that it is a very complex formula that we're just screwing with unforeseen consequences, and we actually care, unlike other species, we care about the future. We care about everything that happens. We care about our children, our children's children, our children's children's children.
If that were true, then what are we doing interfering in a way that's artificial? We should be, if we really cared about the environment, and you're saying that we look to the future and we see the effect that we have on the environment, by propagating these species that should have died out, by artificially supporting them, we are irrevocably altering the environment.
We're already doing that. Every animal does that all the time.
Your idea is to make it worse.
No, my idea is that we can see the consequence of our actions. This is something that we can observe. Other animals can't. They don't have the capacity. We're just smart enough to do it.
Right. Okay.
So we can see the consequences of our actions. We realize that, every time you do something, you're rolling a die. Maybe nothing happens. Maybe something detrimental, something horrible happens. We can see the changes that we produce. So therefore, we're responsible for those changes.
And so your solution to this is to artificially manipulate the environment even further.
No, actually, keeping things alive like that, if it's damage that we're doing, would be artificially screwing with the environment less. It would be maintaining something of the past, so that if it turns out we did something terrible, that bat species we wiped out, turns out they kill all these insects that cause malaria. So, we keep the bats. So now we just need to breed them and reintroduce them to the environment to fix the thing that we screwed up.
So your position is that pandas have a digestive tract designed to eat meat because of human intervention.
I'm saying that pandas have a digestive system that's designed to eat meat, and they started eating bamboo, and I don't know what they did to the bamboo. The bamboo species, they lived off of it. They ate a ton of it, so clearly they're doing something. They're clearing brush. And that clearing of brush could be doing something drastic. They could have wiped out a species of bamboo, which was just invading into other environments and was competing with other things. And the panda bear came in, accepted its ecological niche, and started doing stuff. And this worked as part of the machine. Chugga, chugga, chugga. And now we kill all the panda bears. If all the panda bears die out because we've invaded... Well, we are. I mean, for the most part, we're talking about human-caused interference in the environment.
Right, and I'm saying that pandas aren't affected by human-caused interference in the environment. Panda bears are affected by the fact that they don't have the ability to propagate.
No, panda bears still propagated up until we started taking them. The reason that we started putting them in museums and the fact that they're a Chinese treasure is because there were very few of them, because the Chinese moved into their area and started to kill and eat them.
So blame the Chinese. That's what you're going to do. You're just going to blame the Chinese.
There's lead in my toothpaste and lack of panda bears. That's what I blame the Chinese for. Oh, and cheap T-shirts. I blame the Chinese for all three of those things, and that's where I stand. And I'm sticking with that.
I mean, that does seem reasonable, but the point is, the money and resources that are spent on continuing to keep alive these species who, left to their own devices, whether it's because of human intervention or not.
Well, okay, can we at least agree on, over-whaling? We're wiping out a species of whale because we're killing them. We're not even moving into their environment. We're actively killing them, or elephants, or something where there's a clear cause and effect that we move in and kill them all.
No, we can't.
Simply saying that we should not kill them all.
Why not?
We should stop killing them.
I say that we, as animals on this planet, given the tools and capabilities that we have, do any other life forms on this planet have the considerations that you're saying?
Any other life forms on the planet have the considerations that I'm saying? No, they don't have the capacity. The problem we have and the limitation we have is that we are aware of what is going on. They're not.
I think that awareness makes us arrogant and makes us think that we are more masters of our environment than we actually are.
That may be true, but it also is shown to be obvious that we are doing more to our environment than any other species has. Simple as that. We are adapting our environment and changing our environment more than anyone ever has. What does that do? I don't know. I don't have another planet to run the experiment on to find out what the cause and effect of that is. It seems to me that when the machine has cogs, just stop taking out cogs. Stop taking out cogs whenever possible. I'm not saying that, we should, like the panda bear. The panda, there's nothing we can really do. We stopped killing the pandas a long time ago, and pandas can't function as close to society as they would have to live. Therefore, we keep them in zoos, and that's fine because that's something we can watch and we can learn and we can observe. But there are other instances, like elephants, like specific whales. There are a lot of animals that we've hunted to extinction. There's wolves that the ranchers haven't even hunted; they've just killed them to extinction. There's a lot of species out there that we can simply stop killing. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's unreasonable.
Violate the principles of ecology, would mess with the carrying capacity of any particular environment. We are an animal on this planet like any other animal. We are bound by those rules of ecology.
Your presumption that we are arrogant enough to assume that we can fill every ecological niche, your arrogance in that matter is baffling.
I don't have arrogance in that matter. In fact, I'm saying the exact opposite.
No, I'm saying that you're not. I'm commenting specifically that's exactly what you're saying. The carrying capacity of an environment, we are filling the niche that was filled by someone else. We're taking over the ecological niche. The wolf, we've decided we're going to do agriculture or ranching. We're going to have all our sheep. We're going to control the carrying capacity. That is an arrogance, a tremendous arrogance that you're promoting.
Just like a lion controls the carrying capacity of the Sahara.
I don't think a lion controls it. A lion takes part in it.
To the exact same extent that humans do.
If lions could use a machine gun to mow down a whole series of zebras, a new and dynamic thing which had never existed before, a brand new idea which you have no idea what the effect of your actions are.
You're talking about a matter of degrees.
I am. And
lions have weapons, humans have weapons.
Again, there is sometimes a difference in degree. One neuron, not that useful. A brain, really handy. Sometimes a matter of degrees does change the game.
Maybe so. All right. Well, we want to know what you think. So send us an email. It's reason@wnyatheist.org. So, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we keep the pandas alive because we think they're cute.
They really are cute, though.
You know that
their little hands, and they hold the thing and they eat. Oh, they're fantastic. They're adorable. A little black and white, and, they're just cute.
I don't know. It seems presumptuous to me that we do artificially keep these species alive. And position of the argument aside, I don't know. I don't know if we should be doing that or if we shouldn't be doing that.
Well, that's my problem. Is I'm not sure that should or shouldn't really comes into play. I mean, truth be told, we do.
Yeah.
So we wipe out one species and we save and promote another. That's just what we do, and that's the problem with being a human, is that you are part of the machine. Yeah. But our society is part of the machine, and our society says to keep some things alive. So you can't just take one part out of the machine. It's a very dynamic process that we take part in. We're a part of the whole thing.
This is true. Okay, well, Josh, do you have a quote for us to wrap up the show this week?
Indeed. We can safely claim that Darwinism to be just another religion out there, except that it's too easy to refute and has no divine revelations to back it up. That's from 3 Simple Questions for Evolutionists from Islamophilic.
Yeah, I think we've refuted that.
A little bit.
So, but maybe not. Maybe we're just missing the whole point here.
I have not Islamophilic. Well, I haven't read, every single commentary on every single religious doctrine out there. So until I do, I'm going to have to say they're probably right.
All right, then. Well, thanks for staying with us to the bottom of another episode of Reason. We're at 1 hour and 53 minutes. So how about that? Next week, we're going to be talking about atheists in popular culture, which should be a good time. It's probably our perspective that, at least to some extent, atheists are kind of presented to the general zeitgeist as dicks.
Yeah, they really like that idea that you take the mystery out of everything. Why do you have to destroy everything? You're so cold and non-emotional.
You don't believe in anything. You believe in nothing.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
The
nihilistic nature of atheism. All right. Until next week.
Farewell.
Have a nice one.